My name is Ethan Miller, and I've been staring at spreadsheets for so long that I dream in Excel formulas. It was a typical gray Tuesday morning in Manhattan when I discovered something that would change everything about my life at Darnell and Rowe. The coffee was getting cold on my desk, steam rising from my mug like the morning fog rolling off the Hudson River outside our 32nd floor office window. To continue listening to this beautiful and special story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from so I can include a special shout out for you in a future story. I was deep into reviewing the quarterly filings for Meridian Corp's Brazilian subsidiary when something caught my eye. The discrepancy in their international compensation records that made my stomach drop. The numbers weren't adding up. Millions in executive bonuses were being structured through offshore entities in a way that could trigger massive IRS penalties. This wasn't just an error. This was a potential compliance nightmare that could destroy our client and our firm's reputation. The morning rush hour traffic honked 32 floors below as I double-checked my calculation. Yellow taxis weaved between delivery trucks and steam rose from manholes like urban geysers. But up here in our glass tower, all I could hear was the hum of fluorescent lights and the clicking of keyboards. My hands were actually shaking as I realized the magnitude of what I'd found. I'd been with Darnell and Rowe for 3 years now, ever since I moved from Toronto to chase the American dream. My H-1B visa was about to convert to a green card. Finally, permanent residency was within reach. I couldn't afford to rock any boats, but I also couldn't ignore what was right in front of me. This was the kind of discovery that could make or break careers. Chapter 2. I built something beautiful. For the next 4 days, I barely left the office. I ordered takeout from the same Chinese place on 47th Street. Beef and broccoli became my fuel as I constructed what I knew would be the most important document of my career. The tax alert I was creating wasn't just paperwork, it was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. Every footnote was meticulously researched. Every regulation cited was cross-referenced with recent IRS guidance. I mapped out the entire compensation structure, traced the money flows through 3 different jurisdictions, and calculated the potential penalties down to the last dollar. The document grew to 47 pages of technical brilliance that could save Meridian Corp from a $50 million tax liability. My office became my second home. The cleaning crew, Maria and her team, would find me there at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and legal pads covered in my cramped handwriting. "You work too hard, Micho," Maria would say in her gentle Puerto Rican accent as she emptied my trash can. She reminded me of my grandmother back in Toronto, that same caring concern in her voice. I remember the exact moment I finished the alert. It was Friday night, 11:30 p.m., and the office was empty except for the security guard making his round. The city sprawled out below me, a glittering constellation of dreams and ambitions. I felt proud, genuinely proud of something I'd created with my own hands and mind. This document could protect our client and showcase my expertise to the partner. I saved the file with my name clearly marked as the author, backed it up to our compliance server, and sent David Coleman, my manager, an email with the subject line, "Urgent Critical Tax Alert for Meridian Corp, please review." I attached my 47 pages of work and went home to my studio apartment in Queens, finally ready to sleep. Chapter 3. He erased me like I never existed. Monday morning hit me like a punch to the gut. I walked into the office expecting praise, maybe even a meeting with the partners about my discovery. Instead, I found an all-hands email in my inbox from David Coleman, sent to the entire tax department and copied to senior management. "Please find attached the comprehensive tax alert I've prepared regarding Meridian Corp's international compensation structure." The email read, "After extensive analysis, I've identified critical compliance issues that require immediate attention from the IRS." My heart stopped. I clicked on the attachment with trembling fingers. It was my document, every word, every calculation, every carefully crafted argument, but with one crucial difference. My name had been systematically removed from every page. Where it once said "Prepared by Ethan Miller, CPA," it now read "Prepared by David Coleman, CPA, Senior Manager." I sat there staring at my computer screen as my colleagues walked past my cubicle, their morning conversations about weekend plans and coffee preferences fading into white noise. David had taken 47 pages of my life's work and claimed it as his own. Not just claimed it, he'd sent it directly to the IRS and senior management, positioning himself as the brilliant analyst who'd saved the day. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. David wasn't just my manager. I'd trusted him. We'd grabbed beers after work, talked about our families, shared stories about navigating corporate America as outsiders. Him from a small town in Ohio, me from Canada. I thought we had mutual respect, but there he was, 3 cubicles away, accepting congratulations from Janet Mitchell, one of the senior partners. Excellent work on the Meridian alert, David, she was saying. This is exactly the kind of proactive analysis that sets us apart. David beamed like he'd discovered fire, not once glancing in my direction. Chapter 4. The choice that would define me. That night, I sat in my tiny Queens apartment, staring at my reflection in the black window that overlooked the 7. The elevated subway rattled past every few minutes, its lights cutting through the darkness like a mechanical heartbeat. I had a choice to make, and I knew it would define who I was as a person. Option 1: storm into Janet Mitchell's office, print out the email evidence, and expose David for the fraud he was. Fight for credit, demand recognition, make noise until someone listened. It was the American way, right? Speak up, stand tall, claim your piece of the pie. But option 2 whispered in my ear with quiet intensity. Wait. Watch. Let the truth reveal itself through the very system that David was trying to manipulate. I knew something he didn't. Corporate compliance systems keep records of everything. Every file edit, every email sent, every document accessed gets logged with timestamps and user IDs. My green card application was pending. Immigration lawyers had warned me about keeping a low profile, avoiding any workplace conflicts that could be twisted into character issues during the final review process. If I made waves, David could retaliate, maybe even claim I was insubordinate or difficult to work with. 3 years of legal fees and bureaucratic hoops could vanish with one bad performance review. I made my choice sitting there in the darkness, with the distant sound of Queens traffic humming below. I would be patient, I would be smart, and I would let David hang himself with his own rope. Chapter 5. I became a ghost. The next few weeks were the strangest of my professional life. I watched David bask in praise for his discovery, while I became invisible, a ghost haunting the cubicles of Darnell and Rowe. Partners I'd never spoken to before stopped by his desk to congratulate him. He was invited to client meetings I should have been attending. His photo appeared in the company newsletter under the headline "Tax Alert Saves Client Millions." But I wasn't idle. I was documenting everything with the methodical precision that had made me good at my job in the first place. I printed and saved every email, every version of the document, every timestamp from our file server. I took screenshots of the original metadata showing my authorship. I even saved the initial draft emails where David had acknowledged my work before deciding to steal it. The hardest part wasn't the injustice, it was the loneliness. I couldn't tell anyone what was happening without risking my position. My girlfriend Sarah back in Toronto sensed something was wrong during our video calls, but I couldn't explain without sounding paranoid or bitter. "You seem distracted, Ethan," she'd say, her face pixelated on my laptop screen. "Is everything okay at work?" "Just busy," I'd reply, which wasn't entirely a lie. I was busy, but not with tax alerts or client research. I was busy learning patience, busy studying the fine art of letting karma work at its own pace. During lunch breaks, I'd walk through Central Park watching office workers like myself hurry along the pathways with their takeout bags and stressed expression. The autumn leaves were turning golden brown, crunching under my feet as I tried to process the strange limbo I was living in. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something I couldn't quite name. Chapter 6. The IRS started asking questions. 3 weeks after David submitted his alert, the IRS responded. I wasn't included in the initial correspondence, of course, but I had friends in the compliance department who kept me informed. The federal auditors were impressed by the thoroughness of the analysis and wanted to schedule a detailed review meeting. "They're sending a full team," whispered Kelly from compliance during our chance encounter at the office coffee machine. 3 senior agents, plus a specialist in international tax law. "This is big, Ethan, really big." What Kelly didn't know was that IRS investigations follow strict protocols. When they receive complex technical documents, they conduct their own verification process. They don't just take your word for it, they audit the auditors. They want to interview the person who actually did the analysis, understand their methodology, probe their expertise with detailed questions. David was scheduled to present to the IRS team the following Tuesday. I watched him prepare from my cubicle, noting how he kept returning to my original files, frantically trying to understand the technical arguments he'd claimed as his own. He scheduled preparation meetings with junior staff who'd had nothing to do with the original research, clearly fishing for insights he could use. The morning of the IRS meeting, David looked pale. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and I noticed coffee stains on his tie. Details that would have been unthinkable for the normally polished manager I'd known for 3 years. He kept checking his phone, probably reviewing the notes he'd compiled for my work. I arrived at the office early that Tuesday, ostensibly to catch up on other client files, but really to observe. The IRS team arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, 3 agents in conservative suits, carrying briefcases and laptops, looking like they meant business. They were led to the main conference room, where David would present my analysis as his own. Chapter 7. The cracks began to show. The presentation lasted 2 hours. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see David gesturing at PowerPoint slides, pointing to charts and calculations he hadn't created. The IRS agents took copious notes, occasionally stopping him to ask clarifying questions that made him pause and shuffle through his papers. When they broke for lunch, I overheard one of the agents talking to Janet Mitchell in the hallway. "We'd like to review the original research files and interview some of the team members who worked on this analysis," the agent was saying. "Standard procedure for cases of this magnitude." Janet nodded professionally, but I caught a flicker of confusion in her expression. "Of course, David can provide you with all the documentation you need. Actually," the agent continued, "we'd prefer to speak with whoever did the initial forensic work. The technical depth of this analysis suggests multiple specialists were involved. Can you provide us with the names of everyone who contributed to the research?" That afternoon, David called an impromptu meeting with our small tax team. His voice was steady, but I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he addressed us. "The IRS wants to conduct follow-up interviews about the Meridian alert," he explained. "Just routine stuff, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page about the timeline and methodology." He looked directly at me for the first time in weeks. "Ethan, you've been working on similar cases. You might be asked about our general approach to international compensation reviews." I nodded calmly. "Of course, David. I'm happy to help however I can." What I didn't say was that I'd already been contacted by the IRS. Not officially, not yet. But Kelly in compliance had mentioned that the agents were requesting access to our file servers and email archive. "Standard procedure," she'd said, when they wanted to verify the authenticity and timeline of submitted documents. Chapter 8. He started falling apart. The following week, David's behavior became increasingly erratic. I watched him come in early and stay late, frantically trying to master details he should have known intimately if he'd actually created the analysis. He scheduled one-on-one meetings with everyone who'd ever worked on international tax cases, clearly trying to build a plausible narrative about his collaborative approach to the Meridian research. But corporate email systems don't lie, and metadata doesn't forget. Every time David opened one of my original files, the system logged his access with a timestamp. Every edit he made to try to understand my methodology left a digital fingerprint. The compliance software we used tracked everything: who created what, when files were modified, which emails contained which attachments. I started noticing small mistakes in David's work on other cases. His confidence was shaken, and it showed. During a client call about a relatively simple depreciation issue, he fumbled through explanations that should have been second nature for someone with his experience level. Janet Mitchell was in that meeting, and I saw her taking notes that had nothing to do with the client's question. The IRS agents returned the following Thursday for their detailed follow-up interviews. This time, they brought a computer forensics specialist, a clear sign that they were conducting a deeper investigation into the document's origins. David was scheduled for the first interview. I was working at my desk when he emerged from that meeting, and I've never seen someone look more defeated. His face was gray, his shirt was soaked with sweat, and he walked to his office like a man heading to his own execution. He closed his door, something he rarely did, and I could see him through the glass partition, head in his hands. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Ethan Miller, this is Agent Sarah Chen from the IRS. We'd like to schedule a time to speak with you about the Meridian Corporation tax alert. Would tomorrow at 2 p.m. work for your schedule?" The IRS interview room was sterile and intimidating: white walls, fluorescent lighting, and a conference table that looked like it had witnessed 1,000 uncomfortable conversations. Agent Chen sat across from me with her laptop open, flanked by 2 colleagues who introduced themselves but whose names I immediately forgot due to nerves. "Miss Miller," Agent Chen began, We've been reviewing the technical analysis submitted regarding Meridian Corporation's compensation structure. Based on our investigation of the digital records, we have some questions about the document's authorship and timeline. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a detailed log of file activities, showing every time someone had accessed, modified, or shared my original alert. The timestamps told a clear story. Ethan Miller created the original files, worked on them exclusively for 4 days, and sent them to David Coleman. Then David Coleman removed all references to Ethan Miller and submitted the document to the IRS as his own work. "Can you walk us through your involvement in this analysis?" Agent Chen asked. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely. I told them everything: how I discovered the discrepancy, the late nights researching regulations, the methodical construction of the 47-page alert. I explained my reasoning for each section, demonstrated my understanding of the technical arguments, and answered detailed questions about the international tax law principles I'd applied. The agents exchanged glances. Agent Chen made notes on her pad. "Miss Miller, the metadata and email logs support your account completely. They also reveal that Mr. Coleman accessed these files repeatedly in the days following your submission, apparently trying to understand analysis he claimed to have created himself." She closed her laptop and looked at me directly. "This kind of professional misconduct undermines the integrity of the tax compliance process. We take it very seriously." As I walked back to my desk after the interview, I felt lighter than I had in months. I hadn't thrown anyone under the bus. I'd simply told the truth when asked. The evidence had spoken for itself, just as I'd hoped it would. David Coleman was terminated the following Monday. The official reason given to staff was violation of professional standards, but those of us who knew the situation understood exactly what had happened. Janet Mitchell personally delivered the news to our department, her expression stern and disappointed. "Integrity is the foundation of everything we do at Darnell and Rowe," she announced to our assembled team. "When that trust is broken, we have no choice but to take decisive action." After the meeting, Janet approached my desk. "Ethan, I owe you an apology. I should have verified the authorship of that alert before praising the wrong person. Your work was exceptional, and you'll be receiving full credit in our correspondence with the IRS going forward." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm also pleased to tell you that the partners have been discussing your future here. We'd like to offer you David's position as senior manager, along with the salary increase and benefits that come with it." I accepted the promotion, of course, but what meant more to me was the way she said it, with genuine respect and recognition of my abilities. The American dream I'd been chasing for 3 years was finally within reach, earned through patience, integrity, and the quiet confidence that truth finds a way. That evening, I hauled Sarah in Toronto to share the news. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her face glowing on my laptop screen. "You did the right thing, even when it was hard." "Actually," I replied, "I think I did something better than the right thing. I trusted that the right thing would happen on its own." My green card was approved 2 weeks later. As I held that precious document in my hands, proof of my permanent place in this country, I thought about the lesson I'd learned in those difficult weeks. Sometimes the most powerful action is patient inaction. Sometimes justice doesn't need you to fight for it. It just needs you to step aside and let the truth breathe. David Coleman never worked in tax again, as far as I know. The professional accounting networks in New York are smaller than people think, and word travels fast about integrity violations. But I didn't feel satisfaction at his downfall, just relief that the truth had emerged without me having to compromise my own values. Today, I manage a team of young analysts who remind me of myself 3 years ago, hungry, talented, and eager to prove themselves in the competitive world of corporate tax law. When I review their work, I make sure their names are on every document they create. When they make discoveries, I ensure they receive credit. When they produce exceptional analysis, I make sure the partners know exactly who deserves recognition. Because I learned something important in that windowless IRS interview room. Integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when people are watching. It's about trusting that the right thing will ultimately prevail, even when you're the only one who knows the truth. The city looks different now from my corner office on the 35th floor. The same taxis weave through the same streets, the same steam rises from the same manholes. But I see it all through different eyes. I see it as someone who belongs here, someone who earned his place, not by shouting the loudest or fighting the hardest, but by having the patience to let justice work at its own quiet pace. And sometimes late at night when I'm the last one in the office, I think about that moment when I chose silence over confrontation, patience over anger. It was the most American thing I could have done, trusting the system to work, believing that merit and truth would eventually win out over deception and theft. The elevator dings softly as I head home to Queens, my reflection clear in the polished steel doors. I'm not the same person who discovered that smoking gun in Meridian Corp's compensation records. I'm someone who learned that sometimes the quietest victories are the most meaningful ones.